Welcome to another episode of The Change, where we introduce you to the people and ideas that are shaping MENA region. Our guest today is an expert in corporate innovation, digital transformation and omnichannel experience, and he has had a chance to source his experience from regions like Australia, Europe, Middle East. He spent 5 years with Diageo, a multinational alcoholic beverage company, as a global vendor manager, which gave him a great opportunity to work with some of the biggest names in tech space, such as Accenture, SAP, IBM, Salesforce, and Deloitte. He moved to Middle East as an omnichannel deployment manager for Altair Group, where he spent 5 years, delivering technical capabilities into bricks and mortar while bridging digital capabilities across the organization. He is currently holding a role of innovation lead for Dubai-based conglomerate Futtaim Group, where he is responsible for building Futtaim's innovation function from scratch. Piece of cake for the organization of 42,000 employees.
Absolutely.
Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Neil Ford to this episode of the Change vlog.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's good to have you
Pleasure
here, buddy.
to be here.
So, tell me about the role of innovation lead in AFG and what brought you there.
All right. So my background is I come from a project management and program management side and vendor management side. Through Australia and through UK, those were the areas I focused on, and then I came to that in the UAE as well. However, I started getting a little bit frustrated purely on the implementation side. I started to become a little bit more interested in the pointy end of the business, shall we say, because I felt like sometimes we were getting to things at the end, and I can see that the way that things happen these days, how fast things move, I wanted to kind of move to that side of the business more. So I found myself on the omnichannel side and deploying innovation and digital capability in my previous company. And then an opportunity came up in Futtaim. They'd built an amazing new innovation hub, which is a second to none beautiful space, and opened it in 2018, mid-2018. And that's how I found myself there.
Interesting. Starting innovation hub, innovation center for a corporate is not an easy task at all, and it's not something that there is like a rule book that you can just follow and see how others did it and then just start, right?
Well, exactly. I mean, I think it's different for every company.
Exactly.
The role that I'm particularly in at the moment, we have different verticals. And what is innovation for one might not be innovation for another.
Exactly.
What a requirement is for one is not necessarily the same requirement for another. So I don't think that you can have a one-size-fits-all approach. What I would say is by commoditizing our services as much as possible, it allows the businesses to dip in to the points or elements that they want and dip out again, depending on what they need.
Oh, yeah, definitely. You need to have a bigger picture, I guess, in mind. So you've been through a learning curve of around 1 year, trying out different strategies, I guess, and I'm sure that you pivoted a couple of times.
Yeah.
So now I assume you're on a better kind of track, and you know what you wanna do. What are the kind of the major challenges that you are facing now, given the type of the organization that you guys are?
So yeah, I mean, there's always going to be challenges. Ironically, COVID is a big challenge because on one hand, that is an instigator for innovation, and we've seen a massive upsurge in not only for our company, but across the globe of changes. But at the same time, it also means that companies have to focus on very specific roadmaps. They need to pivot themselves and really focus on certain areas. And sometimes the concept of innovation in a general sense gets lost a bit there. Digitalization is very clearly a way that companies need to go. I don't think that's going to change. So there's a massive push across those remits, but sometimes that doesn't necessarily transfer to innovation activities. I alluded to it a second ago. We have a big group. It's multiple business units. And then again, they historically have worked in I wouldn't say silos, but in their own ways of working. And that is the same of a lot of corporates. I see that as a generic challenge, getting that alignment. That is a huge barrier to progression in the innovation field. And speed of execution, if you're in a corporate environment, the ability to turn around something and get it done quickly is often hamstrung by bureaucracy or red tape and the ability to actually turn things around quickly. We want our innovation hub to be a little bit different to that, to be able to move quickly, but it does pose problems.
No, I mean you have a big task in front of you as innovation lead of a hub like yours. It's absolutely, you can't argue that a concept on innovation center, if successful for a corporate, can mean a lot. So it's just a matter of time, whether you will have enough time to push through the process and eventually reach the stage where you are delivering what is expected from you to deliver, right?
And look, I always think that there's a difficulty because you want an innovation center to be slightly separate. You don't want to be stuck in the standard ways of working and the historical kind of business that's gone before, because you want to promote different ways of thinking. But at the same time, you've also got to be close enough to be able to get buy-in.
Exactly.
And be close enough to that strategy so that you can help elevate the solution or bring something new to the table. I always make the kind of example, if I come in at the moment and say, I'm going to deliver you a rocket to a healthcare function, they're just going to go, why? I don't need that. You don't. And by the way, you're not the subject matter expert. We're the subject matter experts. So my take on it is, what can we do in our formative period to elevate things that may already be on a roadmap, but how can we elevate that and drive value for the business such that I come back to them in a year's time and say, I'm going to give you a rocket. They go, okay, I'll listen this time. And it's a different conversation.
That is a good base for the question that I wanted to ask you. I think that the perspective slightly changed over the previous couple of months due to the whole COVID crisis that we have, and this introduced, I believe, new ways of approaching strategy and like strategic projects. And I think that larger organizations were more keen maybe to explore longer term projects before. So okay, let's look at 2 to 3 years maybe. What about now? Is it changed?
Yeah, I mean there's a real need to push things quickly. I mean, it depends on the business as well. Whether it's healthcare at the moment is all hands on deck. Pushing forward as quickly as possible.
Like results.
Exactly, turning things around because the situation changes so quickly. Whether that is, say, COVID itself, or whether that's government responses, or whether that's travel, and every one of those things has a sequential effect. If, for example, working from home becomes this amazing new way of working, what happens to office space, and then what happens to the retail market, the real estate market, and everything else associated with that from a landlord perspective. So you have all these kind of sequential things that happen, but are happening really, really quickly. So I think from a business perspective, it is just ramped up now. Into hyperbole. Like, you need to turn things around really quickly.
You were already under the spotlight because Innovation Hub, obviously, guys, come on, reimagine our business, you need to transform us. Now you're even more under the spotlight, I guess. This gives you, I guess this gives you voice, right?
It does give you voice, but again, it's also being able to show value, and it's also being close enough to drive some of that strategy.
Challenges you mentioned is alignment of the stakeholders, and that's, you can see that across all organizations, not when you're talking about innovation, when you're talking about any other kind of initiative. Getting the buy-in, getting the actual results quickly. So what's your take on that, and how do you plan to approach tackling those challenges and overcoming them in next? What are you looking at next month, in a couple of months, next couple of years? What's your kind of timeline looking at this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, we had a kind of a 2020 roadmap, and I think that still holds. I foresee a large amount of change management over that, and I think that's probably the case for most companies or big corporates. You know, what was business as usual before is no longer. So we have different KPIs, we have different targets, but my main task, apart from delivering things over the next quarter or two, is also about alignment and getting those buy-in from those business units and being able to deliver to that. So there's a big piece around that. It's still all about alignment. If you get some success, you know, crow about it a little bit. Because once you get runs on the board, it becomes a little bit more self-fulfilling. It becomes a little bit easier as time goes on. But from an innovation perspective, it's difficult as well, because by the very nature of it, you're going to fail. And you hear the word innovation. Companies love that. You know, it's a great buzzword. It's like agile. It's an amazing buzzword.
How do you define innovation?
For me personally, it's about taking something and elevating it and adding a little bit of a different flavor to it. In an initial sense, it's not for me going out and coming up with something completely off the wall. I don't think in a corporate sense, that level of pivoting, you know, if you're in a startup, you pivot, and you can maybe pivot your fundamentals quite substantially. You can't do that in a corporate sense. So for me, it's how do we take something and elevate it that wasn't there before, that wasn't thought about in that way, and that may be as something as simple as the process behind it. That could be something as simple as using design thinking in an organization that's been doing the same processes for the last 15 years. And that to me is innovation, or getting the business to drive their own change initiative with some of the principles and the methodologies that we promote. That to me is innovation. That is a different kind of innovation, I think, to, as I say, a startup proposition.
Well, I think setting up innovation center with the hope that you're going to disrupt your business in the next couple of years would be maybe, you know, but if you manage to bring in, you know, slight improvements or some additional value, you know, over time, multiple times, and you're getting in kind of a momentum, you're on your way to eventually maybe even disrupt your own business. But
and that's
those expectations about innovation and how do you communicate innovation is very important.
And it goes back to an alignment piece. How do we make sure that we're on the same page around that? But again, at this point, for me, it's what value can we drive in the kind of the three areas I highlighted before. And then hopefully in a year's time, we might be even able to have something, you know, as I said, the rocket conversation.
Inshallah. Do you see innovation as the extension to, complement to, or just another word for digital transformation? Two buzzwords, but there is a big misconception about both, I think.
I actually don't look at digital transformation and innovation in the same sphere. Well, they're in the same sphere, but I look at them very differently. I look at digital transformation as a core fundamental. I think if you're a big company or a corporate, you cannot operate in today's environment with either having an understanding or being part of a journey of digital transformation or coming out the other side. For me, it's about the products, and not only the products and services that you deliver, but it's our understanding of the base of that from a data perspective. It's what you can do with that, but it's also on a people level. You need to have a baseline understanding on a digital level these days to be able to create and provide services for the millennials of this world and younger. So I look at that as very much as a core fundamental. I look at innovation slightly different. I would say it complements it. I would work very closely with those teams that are delivering digital transformation. I think it definitely complements it, but I look at it slightly differently in terms of we're a little bit separate to those core fundamentals, and our remit is about delivering change and capability in slightly different ways.
Interesting. So, and I'm going to make a comparison, but what about a typical innovator's dilemma? So what majority of the companies are getting into is kind of, it's easy to establish an innovation center or a hub. You say, okay, let's go out there, let's try to reinvent ourselves. But then over the time you realize that what's kind of is keeping you going is your day-to-day job and your business is not giving you enough time to focus on innovation. So you end up not really investing enough time. And it's similar, like you can compare other businesses as well.
I think from an innovator's dilemma, the concept of fail fast is a nice concept. And I said it before, agile is a nice concept, innovation is a nice concept. But by the nature of innovation, you're not going to hit the mark each and every time. And that is hard for a business to do. A business is all about scaling and delivering on a business proposition with the aim of driving revenue and solutions and productivity and customer growth. Innovation is sometimes, taking something and throwing and hoping it sticks. And again, in a corporate...
Be ready to fail.
Exactly. And in a corporate environment, that's not an easy sell. Again, people are aligned to the idea of it, but actually when it comes down to doing that, if I say, let's do a design sprint and we're going to need 6 people from the business, we're going to need them in the room for a week. By the way, it's going to cost you X, Y, Z, and all your people are going to be out of commission because we want them in and really head down, and we'll come out with a prototype. You may come out of that with something that's really amazing, but equally you may come out of that and have something that doesn't work. From a business perspective, for me, I wouldn't necessarily look at that as a failure because there are a whole bunch of learnings around that you can apply and talk about, well, what didn't work and why it didn't work, and apply that to something new. But if your expectation as a business is, I want to have a solution out of that, I've spent loads of money on this and I've had people go in and disappear and not do their day job for days on end, what have you delivered me? Sometimes that's a hard sell.
It is. So Innovation Hub Center has its KPIs, right?
Yeah.
But if the KPIs of other verticals or businesses are not also readjusted, so they recognize that they have enough space so they can put a bit of effort into innovating as well, the whole concept is not going to work. Because if you would approach me and I'm running a department and you ask me for 6 people, you ask me for some bucks, for some time, for me that's an investment of who knows how much time and effort. If my KPIs are not giving me enough space to do something like that, I would tell you, Neil, you better deliver something. If you don't deliver,
So that's one of the reasons I don't prescribe to going out and doing the rocket conversation at the moment, because I'm more interested in helping deliver a roadmap where there are existing KPIs around that and can help elevate that. But it also does point to a fact that whilst you want the innovation hub to be separate, I think, to be effective, at the same time, you still want your stakeholders to have some skin in the game, whether that is financial, whether that is KPI driven and aligned with the KPIs. It can't be just we're going to do this and hope and have no one else kind of involved in that. It needs to be aligned at a management level across different verticals. So there needs to be some skin in the game, whether that is on an intellectual level, from a sponsorship point of view, from a board perspective, whether it's a financial gain. There does need to be some alignment, even if it is being treated separately. You do still need to have that alignment.
Well, absolutely. That ties into the topic of company culture, and obviously that's an essential part of the whole story. And you mentioned that's one of the roles of Innovation Hub, to kind of influence the company culture towards more, I don't want to use the wrong terminology, open-minded, innovative kind of way of thinking.
Yeah. I mean, I can't stress enough how big a part culture has. When you're in a corporate environment, you need to really think about that and understand how you want to get from A to B and what that change looks like. And culture is a huge part of that, because if you're in a culture, and this is any corporate, if you're in a culture that has just done the same ways of working for a number of years, this is what we do, this is how we go about it.
This is what I'm getting paid for.
Exactly. It is very difficult to snap out of that or try something different. So culturally, I can't. One of the first things I always say is, from a change management perspective, what can we do? How are we going to do that? Because you need people to come along on the journey. And be involved in it. Again, people like the buzzwords, but the buzzwords don't necessarily mean anything. I want to do a design thinking workshop.
What is design thinking? Is that like a magic stick or what?
Exactly. and that's no, it's a set of processes and procedures that you can use to employ to get hopefully a better and more attuned customer centric solution. Oh, okay. What's involved in that? Well, we go through all these different steps, and this is what we get potentially at the end. Oh, it's not just a workshop. No.
Yeah.
And those are the types of things. It's not, people like the buzzwords, and people will say, I'm innovative, or I do things differently. But it's easy to say that, but it's actually very hard to implement that. Habits do not change overnight. I can't remember the statistic about it, but changing a habit is It's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah. What's your approach and strategy in educating people in the organization, kind of bringing them on board?
Again, I think it would depend on company to company. It's going to be very different. What I would employ in my current role might be something different to a different role. I think some of it depends on stakeholder management. How would one business or subject matter expert or manager buy into a concept versus another? So I think it really depends on the individuals and the way that things are managed. Again, each company is different. Some companies spend a lot of time, like my previous company, Diageo. They spent a lot of time on their culture. They spent a lot of time looking at where they wanted to be from a people perspective and driving to that. But they've had years of experience of doing that, and that's, they were very centered in their approach around that. So it's different from every corporate to every corporate.
Okay, so for all other innovation leads out there, what would you, if you need to give 3 advices for them who are starting or who are fighting the same battle as you are, what would you say?
Speak to people, talk to people, learn about their needs and requirements as much as possible. Don't think necessarily that you need to change the world immediately. Again, innovation is not necessarily throwing a hand grenade and hoping you get something amazing out of it. Sometimes it is a little bit more incremental to build up that capability. And thirdly, I'd say be ready to pivot, because even if you are in a corporate environment, you take your learnings and you pivot how you need, which is a very startup concept.
But it's true.
Yeah, but I would say those are the key things for me.
Awesome. Thanks, Neil. Thanks for coming.
Not a problem. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation and that you will learn something new. And see you in another episode of The Change. Until then, please like and subscribe. See you next time. Bye.
Thank you.